That is my United States Most Wanted picture. Yep. I was in Las Vegas, Nevada. The night before, I pulled out $160,000 from ATMs. Wake up the next morning, sign on to cartersmarket.com. There's my name, most wanted beside of it. Now, there are things in life known as aha moments. That was more of an type moment. So what did I do? Well, I did what any normal person would do at that moment in time. I loaded up my Jeep, and I went to Disney World. Yeah, you laugh, but I really went to Disney World. So the question is who is this idiot up here talking to you? The United States Secret Service referred to me as the original internet godfather. Now, what on earth does that mean? Well, to understand that, you have to go back to where I began my life of crime, age 10. I come from Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is one of these areas like the panhandle of Florida, the coast of Louisiana, that has a scam mentality. So if you're not lucky enough or fortunate enough to have a job, you might be involved in some sort of fraud or scam to make money. My mom was kind of like the captain of the fraud industry there. There was insurance fraud, burning homes, faking stolen cars, taking falls, suing people, any number of things like that. That's what my mom did. My dad, not so much. He was kind of the enabler of everything. My mom was an abusive parent, emotionally, verbally, mentally, very negligent. Give you an idea, my first conscious memory was in Fort Lewis, Seattle, and we were driving on the military base. My dad was in the Army, and my mom, I was 7, my sister 6. My mom reaches over, takes the steering wheel, and tries to kill us, tries to run us off the road, and she yells at my dad, "Are you ready to die, you son of a bitch?" And that was the earliest memory that I've got. We ended up moving to Florida. I said my dad had never done any type of fraud before. His one claim to fame in the fraud spectrum is one night, I'm 10, I'm 9, my sister's 8. He's watching 60 Minutes. On 60 Minutes, they're talking about the drug trade in Miami. They're showing the pallets of cash, all the kilos of cocaine. He's sitting there, man, I mean, he's watching that thing. Show ends, he turns over to mom, and he's like, "Hey, I think tomorrow I'm going to apply to be a police officer down in Miami-Dade." And she's like, "That's a good idea." So we had $4,000, took that $4,000, and on the basis of that, his plan was to go down, become a cop, happen upon a drug deal, let them keep the drugs, he'll keep the cash, and we've got it made from that point in time. So they had $4,000 to their name. They take that money, get a U-Haul, drive to Miami. They arrive in Miami, 1980, the same night, the exact same night, the Miami riots broke out. So, Arthur McDuffie had been chased by Miami-Dade police officers. They had caught him, they had beaten him to death, and they had tried to cover it up. So when the news came out, the city just blew up at that point. We got there that night. We lasted about 3 days. Dad goes in, day 1 at the police office, goes through the training, comes back, he's like, "I think it's going to work." Day 2, he goes in, comes home a little early. Turns out that halfway through the training, the real cops bust in and arrest about 9 people who had outstanding warrants who were trying to become police officers. So he comes in, this ain't going to work. So we load up, head north on I-75, and they decide on Panama City. Because, hey, they had taken vacation there at one point as kids. Dad gets a job working 7-Eleven for $140 a week. Mom gets a job as a nurse, which she kept long enough to see Dad off to work, and then she went and partied, which is what she did often. That lasted about a year, and my mom leaves my dad, steals the kids, and I don't see my dad for about 9 years. About 9 years after that. We go back to Eastern Kentucky, and as I said, my mom was negligent. She used to leave me and my sister at home for days at a time. This one day, Mom had been gone for a while. My sister, 9 years old, she walks in. She's got this pack of pork chops. And I'm like, "Where'd you get that?" And she was like, "I stole them." And I'm like, "Show me that." So she does. She takes me to A&P and she shows me how she shoplifts food, and I think that's the best idea in the world. So we start stealing food. As I got older, and make no mistake, I'm not sitting here saying that my childhood resulted in me breaking the law. No, it was my choice. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't really have a choice on that. But once I reached that age of 18, it's my decision. I was a person who put myself in prison and everything else, all right? So As time went on, I engaged in more and more of the types of fraud the family had. Forging documents for benefit fraud, faking car accidents, any number of things like that. I ended up financing my first marriage in 1994 by faking a car accident through USAA.com is what I want to say, but through USAA and getting the benefits. Me and my wife, we moved to Lexington, Kentucky. I went to the University of Kentucky for literature. I've got this thing where historically, I've chosen bad women. It's like I've got a sign that says, come to me. So my wife, she was in school as well, but she didn't, the only thing she wanted to do was go to school. She didn't work, didn't clean, cook, anything else. Brett had a full-time job, cook, clean, go to school, everything else. Something had to give. With my proclivity toward fraud, what gave? Well, the job. Well, you still got to eat. So about the same time, I discovered this little website called eBay. And I think to myself, eBay? There's got to be a way to make money on that. No idea how, until one night I'm watching Inside Edition. And on Inside Edition, they're talking about Beanie Babies. Now, how many people remember Beanie Babies? You could pay college tuition with a Beanie Baby. The one they were talking about was Peanut the Royal Blue Elephant. Went for $1,500 on eBay. I'm sitting there watching it, much like my dad did with 60 Minutes. The next day I skip class, go around to all the Hallmark stores looking for Peanut. You can't find Peanut because he's on eBay for $1,500, but they've got all these little gray elephants. So I buy a gray elephant for $8. Stop by the grocery store on the way home, pick up a pack of blue Rit dye, go home, try to dye the guy. Well, he's made out of polyester. Doesn't hold dye very well. When you get him out, he looks like he's got the mange. Still, I ended up ripping a lady off. I ripped a lady off for $1,500 on that. Posted a fake picture. She won the bid. I sent her a note saying, hey, I don't know if I can trust you, so send me a postal money order. Once it clears, I'll send you your elephant. She does that. Send her the animal. A week later, she calls, this is not what I ordered. And my response was, lady, you ordered a blue elephant. That is a blue-ish elephant. And right there, I learned my first lesson in cybercrime. And that lesson was, if you wait a victim out long enough, a lot of them, they get exasperated, they throw their hands in the air, they go away. Rarely, even to this day, do they complain to police officers. And you never hear from them again. That was my first lesson in cybercrime. And it went from there. I mean, the next Inside Edition was talking about autographed baseballs. So I went and got a case of baseballs, stopped by the same grocery store on the way home, got a Sharpie, started off autographing Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. Printed out my own certificates of authenticity, sent them all out. That got a visit from the police officers. That's another thing that you learn, is that often cyber criminals are identified early on, and often, because, hey, I didn't start out knowing all this stuff. Not at all. Neither does anyone else. But the thing is that the level of crime that's committed is so low that it doesn't cross that dollar threshold to get anyone's attention. And it kept going like that. It got to the point where I was pirating software and selling that. Pirating software turned into installing mod chips into cable boxes and video game systems, allowing either turning on all the channels or allowing pirated software to play on game consoles. That led into satellite DSS systems. So the 18-inch satellite dishes. In 1997, a Canadian judge ruled that it was legal for a Canadian citizen to pirate those signals, which meant that you could go down to Best Buy, buy a system for $100, rip the card out, program it, send it to Canada, sell it for $500. I started doing that, making a lot of money. Had so many orders I could not fulfill them all, and I thought to myself, well, why do I need to fill them? They were breaking the law anyway. Who are they going to complain to? So I didn't fill any of the orders, started making even more money, got worried about how much was coming in, and decided the best thing I could do was get a fake ID, set up a bank account under that fake ID, and launder the money through there. Now, being at university, you would think I would know where to get a fake ID. Not so much. So I go get online, think I find a guy, send him $200, send him my picture, he rips me off. Well, I get pissed off. I get so pissed off that the end result is shadowcrew.com. Shadowcrew started with a website called Counterfeit Library. Counterfeit Library and Shadowcrew are the precursors to today's darknet markets. That is the first time it appears. Before this site, cybercrime, organized cybercrime, really didn't exist. What we had is we had something called IRC, which was a rolling message board. And if you were going to discuss committing crime or trying to buy and sell identities or anything else, you had to do it on this message board, and it was a mess. So with Counterfeit Library and Shadow Crew, we established what is still today the trust mechanism for organized cybercrime. The review system, the way the forums are set up, the way the marketplaces are set up, that begins with Shadow Crew. To give you an idea of who I am, and again, it's not a claim of fame, it's more a claim of notoriety. First person in organized cybercrime environment to commit account takeovers. First person to commit card not present fraud, and that's virtual credit card theft. First person to commit real identity theft. First person has sold fraudulent bank accounts online, introduced prepaid debit cards online. The reason your bank, or not your bank, but the reason your tax refunds are delayed every single year, I am that SOB that invented the entire tax refund identity theft scam. Yeah, geez. Yeah. So, yeah, I was a bad guy, horrible guy. And that's just the tip of it. That's just off the top of my head what I can think of. Shadow Crew makes the front cover of Forbes 2004. October 26, 2004, the United States Secret Service arrests 33 people in 6 countries in 6 hours, and I am the only guy that gets away. Give you an idea of some of the people I used to work with. Guy in the orange jumpsuit, that is Max Butler. Stole 60 million credit card numbers, ends up with 17 years in prison, still in prison to this day. The guy right here, the clean-cut looking older gentleman, that is David Appleyard. He is a retired mortgage broker. He actually gave up brokering mortgages because he had a taste for the illicit side of life. When I stepped down from Shadow Crew because I knew they were investigating us, we had actually intercepted text messages of the Secret Service. We were seeing IP addresses come in from law enforcement. We knew that we were a short time, so I stepped down. David Appleyard steps in. When he gets arrested, he gets 5 years in prison. The 3 shots there, that is Roman Vega. How many people in the room know what a credit card dump is? If you look on the back of your credit card, that magnetic stripe, on that stripe are 3 data tracks. The first track is the customer's name, second track is the card number / and there's a 16-digit algorithm out the side of that. Third data track is called indiscriminate data. No one uses it. A dump is the second data track because as a criminal, you can change the first track to whatever name you want to change it to and it'll go through just fine, all right? Roman Vega is the first seller of credit card dumps in an organized cybercrime environment. Sold them for $30 a piece. To this day, they still go for $30 a piece. He ends up with 17 years in prison. Guy with a flag behind him, that is Dmitry Golubov. He founded a website called Carter Planet. He was a spammer. He was getting so much credit card information just by spamming, and he had noticed Counterfeit Library and Shadow Crew, and he said to himself, I like that site. So what does he do? He thought to himself, I wonder if people will buy credit card information. Turns out they will. So he set up Counterfeit Library. He ends up partnering with Shadow Crew because he was in the Ukraine at the time. At that point in time, you could not run any debit or credit cards through the entire country of Ukraine. They needed some way to cash out, as you'll see in a few minutes. That's one of the necessities of successful cybercrime. So he sets up Carter Planet, partners with us. He is arrested in 2005. He spends 6 weeks in Ukrainian jail, at which point a parliament member comes up and says, hey, he's not a bad guy, so they let him go. He goes on to start his own political party called the Internet Party of the Ukraine. Its form is to stamp out all fraud. He's never served any time since that point. He stands an excellent chance of being the next president of Ukraine if Vladimir Putin doesn't kill him. Let's start with this guy in the goatee. That is Max Butler. He was our forum techie. He goes on under the screen name Scarface to sell credit cards. He then goes on to become the biggest credit card thief in history, 170 million credit card numbers, TJ Maxx, Dave & Buster's, Heartland Payment Systems. He gets not 1, but 2 20-year sentences. Guy in the black and white, that is Maxic. Maxic was a Turkish national. He worked with Albert Gonzalez. He was arrested in Turkey at an airport. They got him, had his laptop. On his laptop, he had TrueCrypt, which means that the entire laptop was encrypted. They looked at him and they said, hey, we need the key to that. He was like, I'm not giving you the key. They're like, well, we've got a place for you. So they throw him in a Turkish jail for 11 days, at which point he promptly gives them the key, and at which point they promptly give him 30 years in prison. Still in prison. I don't know if he's still alive or not. We know this guy in the middle. Oh, geez. The kid in the bottom, that is Jonathan James, one of the youngest hackers in the United States. Broke into DOD, the Pentagon, NASA. Once he got out of that trouble, he decided he wanted to try credit cards. He partners with Albert Gonzalez. When they were arrested, whether it was true or not, it was true enough for him. So what does he do? He thought that the Secret Service was going to lay the entire blame of the hack at his doorstep. So what does he do? Goes in his dad's bedroom, gets out the .45, writes a note, walks in the bathroom, steps in the shower, blows his brains out. And that's the end of Jonathan James. Now, the reason I show you these things are twofold. The first is that no one who has ever engaged in cybercrime ever comes to a good end. It always goes south. If you're lucky, you get prison time. If you're not, you end up dead somewhere. The second reason is that nowhere here do you see anyone wearing a hoodie. You don't see anybody in their mom's basement, 400 pounds, sitting on the bed, screaming upstairs, "Mom, bring me a sandwich and cut the crusts off. And by the way, I've got the Matrix background rolling in the back." That is not what cyber criminals look like. Cyber criminals don't do that. To be a successful cyber criminal, you have to be a successful, understanding person of human nature. You have to be a social engineer. You have to understand human psychology. You have to be able to manipulate people and read them at the drop of a hat. Because a lot of the times you end up picking up the phone and you have to convince someone to give you information, data, or access quickly. So you have to understand human nature. They do not wear hoodies. They do not weigh 400 pounds in their mom's basement. Excuse me. The guy in the middle, me. Wow. When I went to prison, my entire plan was to get out and do the exact same thing again. I had no doubt about it. I figured, I thought at the time, hey, they took everything from me. I can do the tax fraud. I'm stealing $160,000 a week sometimes. Won't take long to recoup that. It's one of the reasons I escaped prison. I mean, why wait? Let's start now. What happened was, and prison is not that bad. I mean, I like to refer to it as, it's kind of like kindergarten with some dangerous third and fourth graders with knives, all right? But, I say that, but yeah, prison's pretty bad. When I escaped, they sent me out to Big Spring, Texas, where Texas knows how to do two things right. They know how to do barbecue, and they know how to build a prison. I got there, and I was met at the door by the head of the Aryan Brotherhood, the treasurer of the Aryan Brotherhood. And he stops me and he was like, "Hey man, any more white guys come in?" And I'm like, "Yeah, 4 or 5. And he's like, "Well, what are you in for?" I looked at him, I said, "Computer crime." No, you can't say that, because computer crime in prison doesn't mean credit cards or hacking or tax fraud or anything like that. Computer crime means child porn. So I had told the treasurer of the Aryan Brotherhood I was a pedophile. So he looks at me like, ugh. He goes and gets his buddy, these big dudes, and I'm having to explain to him about hacking and credit and all this other stuff, and they're like, "It sounds good, but still, you said computer crime? I don't know." So for the first month, they think I'm this pedophile, but it's just for the first month. Because after that, Wired magazine comes on the compound. It's got an article about me in there, and it says all this stuff about hacking and taxes and credit cards, and it says, "Brett Johnson, Secret Service informant." Oh, see, you ain't a pedophile, you just a snitch. Yeah. Warden calls me in his office. He's like, "Do you feel safe?" Well, if you tell them you don't feel safe, they throw you in the hole for 8 months until you're transferred. I just spent 8 months in the hole from the escape. I'm not wanting to go back because, believe you me, you start to see things after a while. Is that a bug? I don't know, but it was there a second ago. So I'm like, "Yes, sir, I feel completely safe." He's like, "All right, go back to your bunk." They try to confiscate all the magazines from the compound. Almost impossible to do that. Walk in the next day, there's the treasurer on his bunk, magazine in hand, reading it. I'm like, "Ah, shit." Walk up to him, I'm like, "Hey, Nick, what's going on?" "Just doing some reading." "Anything interesting?" "It's getting there." "Well, let me save you the trouble." Take the magazine, show him the line. He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Do we have a problem?" He was like, "Well, did you tell anybody that's here right now?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Well, until someone gets here you snitched on, we don't have a problem. And oh, by the way, I need you to talk to some people for me." So in federal prison, everyone has to have a job. Doesn't matter what you do, but you got to work. I got a job. in education teaching a book club literature class. Funny thing is every single Aryan on the compound signed up for this book club literature class every Wednesday from 6 to 8:30 p.m. Did we teach literature? No. We taught fraud. Help me help you. Whatever you want to know, I'm here for you guys. And that's how I kept my ass from being beaten. And I didn't have to join up with this horrible gang either, which is one of the things you find out. The higher up you go in security, you either join with a gang or they kill you that night. Fortunately, I got out of all that. And that was still, even going through that, I saw 2 people murdered, I saw a couple of suicides, several beatings, and even that did not get me. That did not change my mind. What got me was my sister. She disowned me. Not because I was breaking the law, because I was dating a stripper. That was the line in the sand for her. Oh yeah, the law, I'm fine with that. The stripper though, no. So she hadn't talked to me for over a year. And Denise, that's what I was saying. My parents being my fault of breaking the law? Absolutely not. No. My sister goes on to be a great person. She, as far as I know, the shoplifting was the only time she broke the law. She goes off to be a teacher in North Carolina, is nominated for teacher of the year a few times. Just an outstanding person. Me, show me a crime or a law and I'll try to break it. So she had disowned me and I escaped prison. I prefer not to think of it as escape. I think of it as the institution can no longer benefit me, so I decided to release myself on my own recognizance. Federal government, they called it escape. So she had disowned me. I escaped. They catch me, of course, throw me in a county jail. And I'm sitting there in a county jail in Lexington, Kentucky. My dad comes and visits. They've got a 10-minute visit. And he looks at me. He's like, can I do anything for you? And I looked at him and I said, yeah, you can tell my sister I said I love her. So he goes and he calls my sister. My sister's 7.5 hours away, pregnant, in North Carolina. And this girl gets in the car, and she drives 7.5 hours pregnant to see her dumbass brother. And after that, I spent 8 months in solitary confinement, shipped out to Texas, and I don't get to see my sister again for about 5 years. And it took about 2.5 of those years to get to the point that I understood. And I had always justified my crimes. I'd always said, I did it because of my sister, my family, my wife, my stripper girlfriend. And I believe that justification. It took about 2.5 years, though, for me to come to the conclusion that no, you did it, Johnson. You did it because you chose to do it. You're the reason of all your hardship and pain and everything else. You're the reason that all those people got hurt. Nobody else. You did it because you wanted to. So I got out in 2011. No chance of me breaking the law. Absolutely not. No. But the funny thing is when you're released from prison, you're released with the exact same tools in which you go in with. So I couldn't get a job. I had job offers from Deloitte, from Know Before, fishing classes, everything else. Couldn't take them because I was under probation. Could not touch a computer for 3 years. Could not touch it. So couldn't take those. Got to the point I was applying for fast food jobs. No, that's a computer. Can't take it. Okay. What about a waiter's job? No, idiot. Credit cards and a computer. The only job I could get was pushing a lawnmower. That was it. And before that, I was broke. I didn't have any money. I was bumming money from my dad, from my sister. Had a roommate that was taking care of half the rent. I was on food stamps to buy groceries. It got to the point that, I didn't have any money. And I had this little cat, and I had enough money to feed my cat, and I didn't have enough money to buy toilet paper. So I go to the dollar store and buy the little guy some food. And on the way out, they've got a kiosk there. It's got toilet paper, and I shoplift toilet paper. That was the first crime I committed when I got out. And I was fortunate that about the same time, my wife, Michelle, she finds me. I'd gotten out. I was dating the same type of people I had been dating. I still had that sign, come get me. And she found me, and I ended up moving in with her about 2 months after that. Right then, about the same time, I got the job in lawn care, pushing a lawnmower. And I was working my ass off. And I guess you can tell by looking at me, I'm not the manual labor type of guy. So push that lawnmower for 10 hours a day, come home, literally pass out, wake up the next morning, go at it again, $400 a week. And I was busting my ass, and I was happy to do it. I was like just getting there. And lawn season ended. It got cold. You can't mow grass when it's cold. So the reason I commit crime and you'll see that in a second, is when you commit cybercrime, it's cash, ideology, or status. Mine was cash. Mine's a little more complicated than that. My childhood, the way things worked out for me, I've got this thing where I have to buy love. It's not enough for me to tell somebody that I love them. I have to show it. I have to, my love is worth this. It's worth this purse. It's worth this. I have to buy that. I've got this thing where I'm scared of being abandoned by the people that are important to me. So, lawn season ended. And that tick comes up again. I got to do something. Michelle's the only one working. I've got to do something. So I think to myself, well, at least I can provide food. So I go online, buy some stolen credit cards, start ordering food, and I get caught. Yeah, because that's what happens. So I get caught and I go back to prison. 10 months. And something real funny happened when I went back. My probation officer, he stood up for me. He was like, hey, they're in sentencing. He was like, hey, he's a good guy. We think it's a one-time deal. Prosecutor, she says the same thing. They're like, hey, if you can give him, they'd give me 12 months. Probation officer, he stands up. Your Honor, if you can give him 12 months in a day, he can get out in 10 months, get that good time. We need him out. So the judge reamends it, gets me out in 10 months. And they sent me back to Texas. And Michelle, we weren't married at the time. Michelle, she stood by me. She never questioned that. She's just right there. And when I got out, shortly after that, we got married. And what I found out is that really except for my sister, that was the first time in my life I'd had somebody that needed me for me, not what I could do for them or give to them. So got out and got married. Of course, you look at my resume, still got the same damn problems. You look at my resume, no one's going to hire this guy. So we still had the same money problems. I mean, you could look at our bank account, and it was going down every single month. I mean, every single month. Her dad was giving us money almost every month to pay the bills. And, I know how that story ends. I know what my ticks are. I know what my tells are. And I'm like, I'll go so far, but at some point, something's going to give. So I look at Michelle, and I'm like, hey, let me see what I can do. So I go, of all places, to LinkedIn. It's like I'm like the poster child for LinkedIn these days. So I go to LinkedIn, sign on, and I contact this guy named Keith Malarski, FBI agent. He was involved with the Shadow Crew bust, with the Silk Road bust. I mean, he's a cybercrime super cop. And he damn well knew who I was. And I get on there, and I'm like, hey, man, I just want to say I respect everything you did. You did a great job. And, by the way, I'd like to do things legal for a change. And he believed me. He believed me enough to take me under his wing. To this day, he still gives me references, gives me suggestions on where to go for business, everything else like that. I've not met him as a legitimate person, as a law-abiding citizen. I finally get to do that in July, giving a conference over in Pittsburgh. But from there, he was the first person that took me under his wing. After that, it was the Identity Theft Resource Council. It was the Card Not Present Group, Microsoft, Intersections Identity Guard. The only thing I've done, I've just not broken the law. The only reason I'm here in front of you today is because people have actually given a guy who's done nothing his entire life except break the law a chance to do right. So today, this is what I do. I run anglerfish.com. Basically, I bitch about security a lot. Do a lot of public speaking. I work with banks, security companies, law enforcement, retail groups. I consult across the board. Work with Fortune 500 companies such as Microsoft, consumer groups like Identity Theft Resource Council. And I've dedicated my life to using the knowledge that I've got to helping people avoid the type of person that I used to be. And that's what I do today. I figure I've done so much damn harm in the world that I've got to try to do something to make up. So we were talking, of course, about cybercrime. And until Shadow Crew comes in, as I said, it was just this rolling message board was all it was. All right, just bam, bam, bam. You couldn't keep track of anything. Shadow Crew changes that entire dynamic of organized cybercrime, and it stays exactly like that until this guy, Ross Ulbricht. What happens is two things. The advent of Bitcoin. How many people in the room have Bitcoin? $9,300 today. Yes, I don't have any. So this guy sets up a website called Silk Road. He accepts Bitcoin. He runs it on a thing called the Tor browser. The Tor browser is how you access today's darknet markets, or the darknet in general, all right? He runs Silk Road. When they arrested him, he was caught with $24 million in Bitcoin. And make no mistake, the reason that Bitcoin today is going for $9,300 a piece, this guy, that guy. I don't care a thing about the blockchain. I admit it's great tech. The reason it's so valuable starts with Ross Ulbricht. This is one of his quotes, and we'll read it because it bears reading. I want to use economic theory as a means to abolish the use of coercion and aggression amongst mankind. Just as slavery has been abolished most everywhere, I believe violence, coercion, and all forms of force by one person over another can come to an end. Now, he believed that. He believed that. How did he choose to implement it? By becoming a drug dealer. He was caught with $24 million. He had never spent any of it. He was living in a room for let in San Francisco, sleeping on a mattress on the floor. The only time he had spent any money, he took one vacation. The rest of it went toward trying to hire hitmen to take out the competition. They arrested him, of course, and they gave him not one, but 2 life sentences. Compared to this guy, Alexander Kazas. You will note the Lamborghini in the background. He ran a little site called Alphabay. It was the largest criminal site in the world last year. It was shut down July 5th of last year. When it was shut down, I'll give you an idea of how big it was. When Shadow Crew was closed, we had 4,000 members. When Alphabay was closed, 240,000 members. Times have changed. He was also arrested with $24 million in Bitcoin. Now, there's a news report about to come out that was certainly not all he had. Turns out it's more like 700 million that just went missing, and it just got found. So you will note the Lamborghini. Compared to Ross Ulbricht, a room for let. Motivation of cyber criminals. What drove Ross Ulbricht? Ideology. What drove Alexander Kazas? Cash. Now, Alexander Kazas, he didn't serve any time. They arrested him in Thailand, put him in jail, and he promptly hanged himself because he knew he was going to get life in prison. Alphabay was also dealing drugs. That turns out to be the biggest market on the darknet is drug deals. He was doing fentanyl. Alphabay was responsible for at least 7 fentanyl deaths. So he was going to get life in prison. Instead of doing that, he hangs himself. Motivation, understanding the attacker. As I said earlier, crime is committed, or cybercrime is committed, for one of 3 reasons: status, cash, ideology. Understand why the crime is being committed, and you better understand how to protect yourself against those types of crime. For example, ideology. Most of the time it's cash, but let's take ideology. Why would someone attack your website or business because of ideology? One of the big examples is WikiLeaks. Say, for example, as WikiLeaks went through, they were processing all donations through PayPal. PayPal decides to cut them off. So what happens? PayPal gets DDoSed, loses $200 million. Most of the time it's for cash, but it always boils down to either stealing cash or costing a company cash. Status always comes from it. If you're a good enough criminal, if you're successful enough, you will gain the respect and status of everyone else in your community. It all boils down to these 3 factors. Successful cybercrime means 3 things have to be in place. You have to be able to gather data, commit the crime, cash out. If you can't do all 3, you are completely useless. Why even bother? The problem is that criminals are not good at all 3. A criminal is good in one thing. Sometimes you find them that are good in 2 things. Extremely rare can they do all 3 things. So what happens? That's why these organized criminal communities exist. They allow criminals to network for maximum success. Say someone has information. He can partner or sell that information with someone that knows how to commit the crime or cash out. By doing that, you end up with something like Tesco Bank. November 2016, Tesco Bank in the EU. And this happened on Alphabet. One guy comes in, brand new member, and he makes one post. And that post says, hey, for the past year, I've been able to hit this bank for $1,000 a week, no flags. 2 weeks later, Tesco's hit for $2.5 million. What the hell happened? What happened was someone noticed the post and said to himself, hey, that guy's not BSing. He's not embellishing. That's not hyperbole. He's just stating a fact. At least let me go over and talk to this guy and see what's going on. Now, if Alphabet were still up, you could track it from that point in time. That guy then goes and starts advertising for cashiers, saying, hey, send me your resume. We're going to make a lot of money. And he gets cashiers from the EU, the UK, and the United States to the tune of $2.5 million. To this day, no one has been arrested for that. That is the power of organized cybercrime. One guy had the information. He did not know how to properly commit the crime nor cash out. But by mentioning it, he's able to network and turn a $1,000 a week crime into $2.5 million 2 weeks later. You see this across the board. That's the organization of cybercrime. And make no mistake, it's not a business. It's not a few guys in their basement. It is an economy. It is an economy. It is the definition of capitalism. You're worried about, you think about the United States capitalism? No, 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 no. You don't get any more organized and professional than these guys. Those pictures I showed you earlier, when I was breaking the law, I was 12 to 14 hours a day on a computer. The only time I took off was to go and steal money out of an ATM machine or set up mail drops. That's the story of every organized cybercriminal. It's not this idea that crooks are lazy. Absolutely not. Every day, bam, bam, bam. It's almost like a form of Asperger's syndrome. You get on a subject and you're there until you figure it out and cash it out and max it out. Just bam, bam, bam. Excuse me. The dirty secret of it all today is that cybercrime is not rocket science. A new guy coming in, what can he do? Well, he reads a newspaper article about someone stealing a few $1 million. He doesn't pay attention to the consequences of the guy either dead or life in prison. So he goes to one of these communities. Doesn't know anything about the crimes, anything else. He doesn't even need to know anything about it. Why? Because he can immediately buy a tutorial for $50 that will walk him through step-by-step how to commit the crime. Not confident with the tutorial? That's okay. He can also pay $600, take a live class, it lasts 6 weeks, and you get live tutoring of a guy who will walk you through step by step by step of any type of crime that you want to commit. Payment processing fraud, synthetic fraud, account takeovers, anything else, $600. And he has a guarantee with it. If you don't make money by this, I'll refund your tuition. That's how you learn. Tools? All the tools are off the shelf now. Here's one right here, Anti-Detect. In 2011, a lot of merchants and security companies, they had this bright idea, and it's a great idea. They said, you know, hey, I bet that we can do what's called a canvas fingerprint, which means that you can go to a website, and the browser that you use actually records, the website records like 42 different indicators or identifiers that person's using. And come to find out, those identifiers are so unique that a website as big as Amazon can take a browser fingerprint of someone and recognize that one specific user from that fingerprint across the board without logins or anything else, without cookies. All right? That right there changes the entire game of cybercrime. It was outstanding. The problem is that crooks read white papers. Crooks read websites. As far as I know, crooks are the only people who read terms of service on websites too. So they knew all about browser fingerprinting. For 2 years it was a problem, until they come out with Anti-Detect. Anti-Detect sells for $700 up to $2,900, and it allows a crook to change a fingerprint on the fly. So what happens is when I buy credit card information, that credit card is sold from anywhere from $8 to $20, depending on the bin, the gender, the location. All right? It also comes with person's name, address, phone number, card number, expiration date, 3-digit security code on the back. Is what you get for that much money. It also comes with a fingerprint that the user is using. So I can use a program like this, mimic the fingerprint, and then use this site for geolocation. This site is called LuxSox, and we're a small group. If anybody wants to see this stuff in action with the exception of Anti-Detect, I'm happy to show it to you, all right? LuxSox allows people to use what's called a proxy, so that an order, an account takeover, anything else like that, It's important that the IP address, the computer's address, is as close to the victim as possible, ideally within 5 miles, certainly no more than 25 miles. This site here allows you to do that. It has over 3,000 different IP addresses from the United States. They charge 30 cents a pop for it. It comes with a risk score because they run it through a number of different security companies and risk factors to come up with a score saying, hey, this address is good, you can use it for fraud. 30 cents. Can a company find it? Not if it's used correct. So you get a company like Count or something like that that says they can proxy pierce? Absolutely not. Not if the person knows how to use a proxy correctly. 30 cents takes care of that problem. Tools are off the shelf these days. Everything's easy. Some of the stuff that's being sold, a couple weeks ago, there was this article in the press about a person's identity worth $1,170. I don't know if anybody saw that or not. All right, but that's what they said. And I got pissed because that is not what identities sell for. Identities sell for $41.60. That's what they sell for. That's about average. So for an identity, that's called a fool's, that's a complete identity profile. You get the person's name, address, social, date of birth, mother's maiden, background check, credit report, and any type of open source intel that you can find as well. You get that for $40. Depending again on the credit score, the address, the gender, things like that. Or you can make your own, and we'll get to that for a second. Here's another little interesting thing. Children are the #1 victims of identity theft. Number one, 25% of all kids will be a victim of ID theft. How much does information go for? You can buy it all day long, $2.08. You get the child's name, social, date of birth, mother's maiden, place of birth. That's all you need to commit synthetics, tax fraud, medical fraud, any number of things like that. $2.08 a pop. Some of the crimes that are seen commonly, identity theft, synthetic fraud, account takeover, card not present. We're not going to do card not present. But what I used to teach people when I was committing the crime is that all crime should begin with identity theft, every bit. Why would I set up a bank account under my name when I can do it under your name? Especially if I can make it somewhat close. That way it's kind of even a fraud indicator for me. I know if the police show up at you, I need to watch out. So all crime should begin with identity theft. As I said, it begins basically with building or buying a fool's. Now you can buy a fool's from $40, and sometimes they run as high as $130 depending on the access. And the access would be logins, passwords, stuff like that as well. Or you can build your own. The way you build your own, typically, you go to the dark net and you buy an account. Now that account can be a bank account, it can be a credit card, a debit card, anything else like that, all right? Now, if you buy credit cards online, stolen credit card information, you can use that information almost immediately, but you're not going to be able to max it out. You can get maybe $500 to $1,000 worth of product, and it'll go through and come through fine. But say it's a high quality card. And the top card among fraudsters, the BIN number is 414720. That's his first 6 digits on the credit card. That is a Chase signature card. It's a rewards card. It has been the #1 card among fraudsters for 5 years. If you look at any type of charge-off lists, it's at the top of all lists, all right? Why? It's a rewards card. It's Chase. Chase isn't really good about security. And they expect once you get the card, you're going to make a high purchase. So people want that. So say you buy that Chase card. Well, as a criminal, you're wanting to make more than $500 to $1,000. How do you do that? You have to do an account takeover. To do an account takeover, you have to have a complete identity profile. And account takeovers, and it's like this across the United States, across all systems. It all relies on what's called KBA, knowledge-based authentication questions. If you have the answers to questions, you can take over any type of account that you want to take over, across the board. What do I do from there? What I do from there is I go and pull background checks, typically from Ben Verified. Ben Verified for $17 a month, I can pull unlimited background checks on any number of people that I want to do. So I will pull a background check not only on the victim, but every single associate of the victim. Why? Because I'm hoping to find the mother's maiden name. Can I find it through a background check? Absolutely. Background check on him gives all associates, all family members. From there, find the 2 oldest family members, parents. Pull background checks on the parents. Look for father, brother, something like that. Chances of getting mother's maiden? Outstanding. Color of car. How many people on questions have been asked for color of car? Few. How do you get that? Well, if you've got the VIN number tells the color of the car. There's a digit in there that tells the color. If you don't have the VIN number, you go to Progressive and you apply for insurance to an address. When you're applying, it will automatically list every single car that is at that address. Then you have the color of the car. All right? Pull the background checks. Then it's time to pull, once you have the background checks, time to pull the credit report. Annualcreditreport.com is where you start. As I said before, everything is based on KBA, knowledge-based authentication questions. So, you go to Annual Credit Check, or Credit Report, they ask the KBA questions. Why do you go there? Because on Annual Credit Report, there's no time limit. So you can sit there all day long with your background checks, with Google, everything else, and you can research all the answers until you get them right. Say you make a mistake and don't get them right. That's okay. There are several different credit sites, Credit Karma, all these other places that you can go to that ask the exact same KBA questions. Do I have the answers for those? Oh, yeah. So now I've got the credit report. Then it's time to do any type of follow-up information or research. What type of information or research would that be, Mr. Johnson? Facebook, LinkedIn, any type of social media. Why? Because people love to tell anything that they do, know, people, job, everything else on their social media. I can go to LinkedIn, find out where you work. Once I find out where you work, I go to Glassdoor, find out how much you make. That helps. Need to verify your date of birth. Need to verify your mother, maiden name. Facebook. Hi, Mom, you're my friend. Is your profile public? Probably. Are you sharing way too much information? Probably. Are the wrong people looking at that information? Probably. Just ask Cambridge Analytica. All right? So yes, every crook in the world, every cyber criminal in the world looks at social media as well. All right? It used to be one of these things where social media was, oh, you know, it's just some identity thief doing it. Not anymore. Now it's governments influencing world politics that are doing it. Any follow-up information necessary? There's Donald Trump again. So what can you do once you have that fool's identity profile? Anything you want to do? Anything. I can take over any specific account that I want to take care of. Milk all the money out. And we're going to get to some of the indicators on that in a second. Some of the crimes: HELOC, student loan, new account fraud, synthetic tax fraud, Social Security account takeover, medical theft, and criminal ID theft. See, the thing is that you're on these databases. So you would think, okay, I'll buy my own information. Or once I'm a victim, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I've already been a victim. They're not going to use that again. No, it doesn't work that way. First of all, this information never goes away. Equifax giving you your monitoring? Come on, man. It's a lifetime problem. You're useless. All right? So that information never goes away. What happens is that a criminal will buy that information and build that identity profile. Criminals specialize in one specific type of crime. So the guy may buy your information. He may commit tax fraud. He has no use for it after that. Cast it to the side. Does that mean that you still can't be a victim? Absolutely not. Because the next guy may come along and set up bank accounts under your name, do Social Security account takeover in your name, set up a synthetic profile, apply for loans, anything else. And it keeps going over and over and over again until you get to the point where you don't have any credit left. Is the crime over then? No. Because even then, you can use the information, put it on an ID, and commit crimes. Real crimes at that point, not just virtual ones. It never goes away. The number one theft, the fastest growing form of identity theft on the planet, is called synthetic fraud. How many people in the room know what synthetic fraud is or have heard of it? I know you do. And again, we're small. Any questions? I'm sure there'll be some questions pop up on this topic. Synthetic fraud is the fastest growing form of identity theft on the planet. 80% of all new account fraud, last year's losses, estimated maybe $50 billion. It's 20% of all credit card debt, 5% of all charge-offs. No one knows about it. Banks? No, they think it's just people not paying their bills. So what is it? Basically, it's building a synthetic or a ghost in the credit bureau system, pumping up the credit, cashing out in a short amount of time. In 2011, the Social Security Administration, they randomized Social Security numbers. They did it to combat identity theft. But when they did it, what happened was you could no longer tell when the social was issued or what state it was issued from. Meaning that as long as I create a 9-digit number out of thin air, run it through a Social Security validator, if it's not been given or to someone else, I can use that number. Or I can use a kid's number, apply or put an adult name, an adult date of birth to it, and use that as a Social Security number as well, because they can't identify who it was issued to, the year it was issued, or the state it was issued from, all right? So I get this 9-digit number, usually a kid's ID, put an adult name, date of birth, address, phone number. I apply for credit. Now, credit bureaus don't know you exist until you tell them you exist, okay? They don't have a record of everyone that's born. You have to apply for credit, and at that point, they create this profile, and they know you're alive. So, you apply for credit. The initial application for credit with that synthetic information will be denied, but when it's denied, it sets up a credit profile in that person's information, that synthetic's information, all right? Now, that credit profile has a 0 credit score. It's very thin. It's just got set up. So what do? The idea is to pump the credit score up as fast as possible, cash out as fast as possible. So the first thing you do is you rely on open source intelligence networks. What does that mean? That basically means if there's any crawlers out there, Google search, anything else like that, you want that person to show up, that synthetic to show up in there, okay? What typically happens is these criminals, they set up the ID, then they go over to someplace like listyourself.net, and they put the information in. Listyourself.net is a free white pages listing service. So you put that information in, 2 weeks later, that address starts to get junk mail in that person's name. Then you start applying for rewards cards, airlines, pharmacy, grocery, things like that. You may even take the time out to set up a Facebook account. Once that's taken care of, and you can do this all within 3 days, once that's taken care of, you go over to Capital One. Why Capital One? You apply for a secured card. For $49, Capital One gives you a credit limit of $200. You're already making money on this synthetic. Now that secured card doesn't do a damn thing for credit. What it does is it'll give you maybe a 560 credit score, but it gives you a primary line of credit. Now how on earth do you go ahead and pump the credit score up? Authorized user trade lines is the key to that. And here's how that works. In the United States, what I can do is if I have bad credit, and this is what it's legal, I can come to you and I say, hey, I know you've got good credit, and you know I've got bad credit. Why don't you add me on as an authorized user of your credit card? Now, that doesn't mean I get to use it. I'm just an authorized user on there. I don't have any access to the account whatsoever. Doesn't mess with your credit at all. And you'll look at me and you'll say, Brett, you look trustworthy. I think I will do that. And you'll add me on. Now, the next reporting cycle of that one specific card, that reporting now becomes my credit history for that profile of just that one specific card. As long as the debt ratio is good, as long as the card has a high enough available balance, as long as it's been open long enough. So you're looking for cards that are 5 years old plus. All of that pertains to this synthetic profile as well. So you can take 2 of these authorized users, add them on there. In 30 days, you can go from a 0 to a high 700 credit score, bam, just like that. It's not only the credit score, though. What happens is remember, you've got a thin profile. It's just opened. Not when you put an authorized user on there. When you put an authorized user on there, the profile looks as old as the credit card that's reporting. So while I set up the account last week, if I add an authorized user on that's 5 years old, as soon as that reports, my credit report now looks 5 years old of excellent credit.
Brett, can I just ask a question?
Shoot.
How many, so you're a hacker, you're a cyber criminal, do you use an Excel spreadsheet to figure out how many people you have in play and where they are at in the system? I mean, what happens?
That's a damn good question. So yes, you can use Excel spreadsheets to keep track of everything, all right? Typically, and here's what's so odd about this, all right? Typically it's done with a notepad. So you've got a guy that's sitting there writing all this crap down.
So he's committing cybercrime using analog tools.
Right, because it's easier for him to flip through and find it like that. That's why, and you'll see this on all these arrests. When people are arrested, you see people that have files, have folders, have 3x5 cards. They could easily keep it on a hard drive, but no. And I don't know what it is. I did the exact same thing, but most skilled people in cybercrime keep paper records of this stuff.
And when you get the credit card, are you going after cash advance or are you going after purchases or both?
Depends on what you're doing. So talking about credit card theft, all right? And it also depends on the skill level of the criminal. All right, so when you start cybercrime, the first thing you tend to do is you buy credit card information. Then you use that credit card information, you try to hit Apple or Amazon for laptops. And you fail miserably because you're an idiot and you don't know how to do that kind of stuff, all right? A lot of people at that point go away. Some people stick around, and what do? They get some sense about them. They start carding virtual items. Virtual items turns into clothing, food, and they build up the skill level high enough so they can hit Apple, Amazon, stuff like that. The upper tier people do payment processing, Stripe, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, things like that, all right? So when you see somebody that is doing PayPal fraud, somebody that's doing Stripe payment processing, something like that, that is a skilled person that's doing that. That's not some guy that just started last week. All right, he knows exactly what he's doing. Okay, and that's why now, if you're hitting Stripe, the average criminal that's engaged in Stripe fraud is $20,000 a week right now. That's what he's stealing. Okay, because it's a big process to set it up. You have to go through all types of security.
Community, a small community, or I know. So when Equifax was hacked, I mean, could you look at that and say that sounds like Charlie?
Equifax is different. All right, and here's why. The Equifax breach, and here's one of the points I'm trying to illustrate. Your information is already out there. Yeah. There's no such thing as protecting my information from being released. It's already out there. Last year we had 1,500 breaches, 2.6 billion with a B records compromised. Your information is there. That one website, 60% of you are on it, okay? So what Equifax does is Equifax consolidates that information, and it's correct information. Because sometimes when you're building your own profile or you're buying profiles from criminals, some of the information is incorrect. Maybe the social's off by a digit. Maybe the birth date's off by a year, something like that. If you have Equifax data, it's correct. And it's so correct that you can answer any KBA question you want to answer. Why? Well, who gives all those KBA answers? Equifax. They give it. So if you have that information, you have the answer to any question that you need to answer. And how easy is that? Pretty easy. And I'll walk you through an ATO here in just a second. Numbers, dear Lord, one website had 240,000. Now, it was the biggest website on the planet, but there are hundreds of websites. It is an extremely popular crime because, and I did the same thing, when you're committing online crime, you have this buffer zone. You don't really, and I didn't do that. I didn't consider myself a criminal. No, I'm just doing this online. Online, I'm this bad guy, but in the real world, I'm this good guy. Complete lies. I compartmentalized everything across the board, okay? So that's how synthetic fraud is cashed out. Now, if you're a beginning cyber criminal, you can immediately apply for loans, get $20,000. Pentagon Fed was being hit with that 6 months ago. If you're more adept at cybercrime and identity theft, what do? You get the cards, you apply for credit, you make 6 months worth of payments, and then you cash out for $30,000 to $40,000. Or, to maximize profit, what do? Well, what I do is I go and I pull your social, your date of birth from RoboCheck for $2.90. The only thing I'm going to do with that information is apply for an EIN. Bam. At the same time, I'm going to use your name, your date of birth, different social, different address, different phone number, build up a synthetic credit with that information. Different address, all right? But it's still got your name, your date of birth. Once both are built, once I have that 760, once I have the EIN in hand, what I will do is I will apply for business credit. Why? An initial application for business credit doesn't look at the business. It looks at the person that's backing the business, your credit score, that synthetic credit score. All right? I use your EIN to apply for it, the credit to back it. Why do I do that? That's $200,000 in credit. Yeah, within 6 months. That's the reason that it is the fastest growing form of identity theft on the planet. Banks, they think people just aren't paying their bills. So most of them aren't even cataloging it as fraud. Any questions on synthetic before I go over ATOs real quick? No? Okay. This is the largest form of identity theft on the planet. Account takeovers. Most of it's KBA. All right, so if you know the answer to a question, you can take over someone's account. Now, we're going to talk about bank accounts mostly, but understand that account takeovers now cross the board of every single thing. Merchants, everything. Companies, everything you can imagine, account takeovers are important. Why? Say you have an Amazon account. Now, as a fraudster, I want the account that I'm using to look older. I want it to look legitimate because Amazon knows that a brand new account is much more likely to be fraud related than an account that's 10 years old that has done nothing but ordered Depends undergarments for 10 years. Okay? So if I can get access to that account, add new payment information to it, or add an address to it, the chances of the order going through is much higher than if I try to commit credit card fraud with a brand new account. Come to find out, I can buy those accounts all day long for $3 a piece. They're fished out, all right? Now, it boils down to, and that's the way it is across the board with everything. So, it boils down to how much is that information worth? And the big thing, of course, is banks. So, KBA on banks. How would I take over an account? And this works to this day unless they're doing two-factor authentication. So, what I would do is I would call the bank, spoof the phone number. So when I call the bank, I use a spoofing technique that when I phone in, the phone number that shows on the bank's caller ID is the victim's phone number. That immediately gives the customer service agent a warm, fuzzy feeling. And why do I do that? Well, the first thing is that by spoofing the number, I bypass all internet security, I phone in, and I talk to the lowest paid, least educated member of the company. And that's the only person I have to convince to give me access to anything. All right? I've already helped do that. They're seeing the caller ID on the screen. So they already think I'm that person. The only thing I'm going to do is call in and say, hey, I need to check available balance. Yes, sir. And they'll ask 2 security questions. Sometimes one of those security questions is a mother's maiden name. Sometimes I won't have the mother's maiden name, so what do? I say any name with confidence. Johnson. Sorry, sir, that's not what we have. Well, what do you have? We're not going to tell you what we've got, sir. All right, I don't know what you got, but I know what my mom's name is. What are we going to do? How did you eat? Sir, it's all right. What are they trained to do at that point in time? They're trained to ask 2 other KBA questions. Do I have the answers to those? Oh, yeah. So when I answer those right, then what happens? They change the mother's maiden name to whatever I want them to change the mother's maiden name to. All right? So they then tell me the available balance. As I'm hanging up, oh, by the way, I need you to update phone number for me. Sure. Can we ask, and I have done this, can we ask why you're updating the phone number? Yep, I no longer have that number. So I'm calling in from the number I'm telling them I no longer have. But they're running with it at that point in time. Okay, we'll change it. Change. You let it age out a week to 2 weeks, start cashing out. Now, why is it just the phone number? Because the phone number, if you have the phone number, you control the account. That's the only thing you have to change. Any questions, what do? They call the number on file. If I control the number on file, I control the account. Now, two-factor authentication, how is that handled? Make no mistake, two-factor is great. Until you see somebody selling Verizon Access or AT&T Access, T-Mobile Access, anything else like that. So, how much is this? $26. Comes with every single thing you need to take over that Verizon account. So what I can do is target you. Get your information, buy the PIN number for Verizon, call them up, have your phone number changed from the phone that you've got in your pocket to some prepaid I've got in my pocket. Take over. And here's what's important on this stuff across all boards with ATO. ATO is time sensitive, all right? This stuff has a shelf life. You only have so often or so much time to maximize and try to steal money out of that account. All right? So, 2 days? 2 days is great. It's great. We love that. That gives 2 days to get away with stuff. Can I do an ACH in 2 days? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And for some companies, 2 days is quick. That's one of the reasons Jerry back there, I used to be down on monitoring because we'd hear about monitoring. It's like, yep, love the hell out of monitoring. We love that reactive stuff. Yes, sir. But this new stuff that's coming on, no, you're pinged immediately. Bam, bam. You get that text message immediately. If someone's trying to take over account, port, phone number, anything else like that, it's bam. So the chances of ATO in an account of stealing that money, and make no mistake, the FBI is very good about recovering money, but why even take the chance? Today's monitoring systems, especially with Watson and stuff, that analytical machine learning, AI stuff, oh my God, that's effective. So that's how ATOs work. As I said earlier, all of our information is out there, meaning we're all screwed. Yes, we are. It's over. It's over. Guy over here said today, I think I'm going to get a boat, not get on the internet. I think I'm done. Well, no, you're not done. They can still take advantage of you. And no, we're all not screwed. It's not extremely difficult to take care of yourself. Typical wisdom says freeze the credit of every single person in the house, including kids, because kids are the #1 victims of identity theft. The question is it effective? Not really. When you freeze the credit, you do stop all new account fraud, but understand that new account fraud is 4% of identity theft. Identity thieves don't do it. They don't need to. Hell, your account's already out there. Why worry about setting up new ones? Or replacement guards on the existing accounts and be done with it. All right? So it's 4%. Now, I do advocate for kids doing that kind of stuff, but you also need to monitor kids, and that becomes the big thing all of a sudden, monitoring. Because that other 96% is stuff that a credit freeze won't take care of. Not at all. So you have to monitor bank accounts. You have to monitor website logins, email accounts. You have to monitor social media, which I don't have on there. That Facebook account that you're sharing every single thing on, is anyone looking at it to try to figure out when you're not home? Some personal information, perhaps? Yes, yes. And it's not a question of if you will be a victim. It is a question of when you will be a victim. Make no mistake, the only reason you're not a victim yet is because your name has not been drawn in that lottery. But I promise it's coming. There is no doubt about that. It is coming. So you have to monitor all accounts. In addition to that, I don't care if it's a business or a household, you have to institute strong security for every single person in that group, house, business, whatever. And that means from the ground up to the top floor. Person that's sweeping the floor, person that's signing the checks. Why? As again, I pointed out, I can bypass all internet security, spoof a phone number, call in, who do I talk to? Someone who has very little training, who has been taught to please me. And that's the only person I have to convince to give me access, data, money, anything else like that. So security has to be a foundation of the entire business, household, everything else. Apply all updates. Oh my God. I used to cackle madly when I said that line. Now it's like the steam's left me. Equifax. Equifax for 2 months. 2 months, man. They knew about it. They knew about it. And they sat on their asses, put a music major in charge of security. Meanwhile, what happens? And here's what an update is. This is how you need to think of an update. An update is a broadcast to every single criminal on the planet telling them which doors to walk through. That's the only thing it is. You think the crooks knew that the Equifax hole was there before they announced it in the update? No, I didn't know. But they did know that as soon as it was announced that a whole ton of people weren't going to apply that update. So what happens? That 400-pound kid's in his mom's basement screaming for a sandwich, Matrix background going in the back. He goes to sleep with a sniffer program on, wakes up the next morning, Equifax, yes, gotcha. And that's what happened. So apply all updates. Physical firewall. If you are a business, you have to run a physical firewall. For a household, virtual firewall is fine. Software firewalls are fine. Bring your own device. So how many people in the room access Facebook at work? And we're a small room. No one does that. So, I can see I'm not the only person fibbing in the room. All right, so we do that. Your employees are going to do that. There's no stopping that. All right, but understand that the weakest device that accesses your network is exactly how strong your network is. All right? So if you've got somebody that's doing Facebook, that's downloading torrents, any number of things, answering all those phishing emails and is accessing your network, you're done. What I advise is to get an outside router to an outside network. You're not going to stop them accessing it, so have an outside line that they can tie onto because they're going to keep surfing. At least you remain safe at that point in time. Regularly backup, that is the answer to ransomware. Crooks do not give your information back. If they do, they just take it again later on. Back up everything. Control physical access. Not everyone needs to be able to install every single thing on a computer. Not everyone needs admin access. You do not need admin access unless you have a reason for it. So do not log in as admin unless you have a reason to. DMARC. DMARC is changing the landscape of phishing as we know it. 92% of every single breach begins with a phishing attack. Why? Because it is easier to ask for information than it is to brute force your way into something. There is no patch for human stupidity. All right? So DMARC, what it does is it shuts down the ability of a criminal to spoof a company domain. It's already throughout Europe and the UK. It's coming to the United States. If you've not instituted it, you will be, and you need to get on top of the curve now. How many people in the room? How many people in the room use the same password across multiple websites? Thank you so much. I was sitting there going, man, come on now. The other ones who didn't raise your hands, every one of you, well, 87% of you, 87% of you do that. I do that, and I'm a crook. All right? Yeah. The idea, oh, no, I don't do that. Never do I do that. Yeah, you do it. Yeah, you do it. So, why is it important to have different passwords? Because breaches begin with phishing attacks. Now, you may not fall for that bank phishing email. You may say, I'm not going to fall for that. I know Wells Fargo is not going to ask me that. But are you going to apply the same amount of awareness to your dating profile, your Netflix account, your Hulu account, or anything else like that? Chances is no, because you're going to think, at least subconsciously, why would anyone send me a phishing email from Hulu? Hulu's crap. All right, but if you're using the same login and password for Hulu that you're using for your bank account, that's one of the reasons of what's called credential stuffing. That's why it's so popular right now, because everyone knows you use the same login and password. So, you are not taught how to pick a password. No one in this room really knows how to pick a secure password. We're never told that. We go to a website and we're told to use caps and smaller case, couple of symbols, make it this long. We've got a graph at the bottom that says weak, 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 very strong. Okay, I'm done. You have no idea how you got to very strong. It's just there. What I advise is for people to use a password manager. Okay, it takes all of that out of your hand. Anyone in the room use a password manager? There we go. Password managers are outstanding. They pick the passwords, they'll plug it in for you, they encrypt everything. I mean, it's great. It's great. I use LastPass.
Dashlane.
Dashlane, LastPass. There are several. I don't care which one you use. But I promise you, if you take, and it's a little hard to set up, it takes 45 seconds to a minute. But if you use it for 2 weeks, I promise you won't go back to anything else again. All right? So there are easy ways to make sure that you are not low-hanging fruit.
How does that work?
LastPass, or you go in, you download the program. You can, with LastPass, you can put the passwords in or the accounts in, and then you can have it pick the passwords for you. Then you have a master pass. What I advise people to do is to keep that on a thumb drive, not on the desktop itself, but on the thumb drive. Anytime you need to use the computer, you just plug the thumb drive in, takes care of it all.
Basically, let me just tell you, you open LastPass, you click Morgan Stanley,
yeah,
and it'll say, put your thumb in, or you have one password that controls it, but you just, you identify yourself like you would with your iPhone, and it logs you in.
But it creates a password?
It will create the passwords for you as well.
Yeah.
Okay. It is extremely secure, and make sure that you're not using the same password. Make sure you're not low-hanging fruit. That's the presentation. I'll take any questions that we might have.